The towering forms of the Jedi emerged from the horizon like waking titans. They were not the slow, lumbering creatures of myth, their strength tempered by their size. These were beings of sheer, ancient power, each one a weapon in its own right, capable of reshaping the world with nothing more than a single step. Lyra Avon, the commander of the Pax Theta colony, had known the dangers of colonizing uncharted worlds. She had faced pirates, hostile alien fauna, and the ever-present specter of human conflict that always seemed to follow the expansion of mankind's reach. But this was something else entirely. The Jedi were not just threats to her colony, they were an existential threat to the very future of humanity's place in the stars. When the Jedi first stirred from their long, dormant slumber, the signs were subtle. There were the odd electrical malfunctions, strange fluctuations in the mining operations. No one paid much attention at first, it was dismissed as quirks in the equipment, likely caused by the planet's volatile core. But as the anomalies grew more frequent, the whispers of something else, something more insidious, began to spread among the colonists. Communications with the rest of the fleet began to falter. Ships meant to arrive with supplies never reached their destination, and long-range sensors detected inexplicable energy surges coming from deep within the planet's crust. It wasn't until entire mining rigs went dark overnight, with workers vanishing without a trace, that the first real alarm was raised. Lyra Avon, who had been the steady hand guiding Pax Theta through its early struggles, now found herself grappling with something far beyond the usual difficulties of running a colony. The colony's sensors were picking up something large, something massive beneath the surface of Zyphor structures that had once been thought to be abandoned relics of a forgotten race, now alive with energy and activity. As the discovery spread, fear and unease gripped the hearts of the colonists. The settlers had known they were on an ancient world, but they had always assumed that the Jedi, if they had ever existed, were nothing more than another myth, another lost civilization like the ones they had encountered before. But the truth was much more horrifying. The Jedi were giants, but not in the sense of the tales from ancient Earth. Their civilization had once stretched across the planet like a living entity, a blend of organic and synthetic biology that allowed them to grow, evolve, and dominate their world. Their minds were as vast as their bodies, and their technology reliant on a deep understanding of planetary energy had been capable of feats humanity could only dream of. But this technology had not been developed with human minds in mind. It was alien in every sense. And as humanity had drawn closer to unearthing their ancient secrets, the giants had stirred. Lyra stood at the edge of the observation deck, staring out at the alien world below. The massive, craggy peaks of the mountain ranges rose from the planet's surface, jagged monuments to a civilization long lost to time. The blue-green sky above reflected the shifting clouds, their gentle movements a sharp contrast to the chaos now unfolding below. The colony was no longer the bustling hub it had once been, its streets were deserted, its infrastructure in disrepair as people retreated to shelters, bracing for what was to come. In the distance, a massive shape loomed. One of the Jedi, standing taller than the highest towers in Pax Theta, slowly approached the outer perimeter of the settlement. Its massive footfalls echoed like thunder, shaking the ground with each step. Lyra's heart clenched as she looked at the form through the glass. The Jedi were a mix of both machine and organic parts, their bodies a hybrid of living tissue and dark metal plating, reinforced with thick, segmented armor that glinted menacingly in the sun. Their eyes were like pits of darkness, ancient and calculating, their movements slow but deliberate. Despite their size, the Jedi moved with precision, as if their very presence was an unspoken command to the world around them. The people of Pax Theta had underestimated them. They had assumed that, like the countless civilizations that came before, the Jedi were simply relics of a forgotten age. But now, they were beginning to understand, the Jedi had never left. They had been waiting, and now they had awakened, as if the planet itself had called them back. For a moment, Lyra felt powerless. Her entire life, her entire purpose had been about ensuring the survival of her colony, her people. But here, before her, was an enemy that seemed invincible. The Jedi were not simply a threat, they were a force of nature. They were ancient, godlike beings who had once ruled this world, and in their awakening, they had no intention of allowing humanity to claim what they believed was their birthright. But Lyra would not give in to despair. She was a soldier, a commander. And soldiers did not succumb to fear. They adapted, they fought, and they did whatever was necessary to protect those they were entrusted to lead. As the Jedi began to advance, a low, guttural roar reverberated across the landscape. It was not a sound of anger, but of recognition, as if the giants were acknowledging the human presence in their world. It was a sound that chilled Lyra's bones. "We have to fight," she said, her voice steady despite the rising tide of panic within her. She turned away from the observation window, pacing back toward the command center. "Alert the fleet. We need reinforcements. I want the perimeter defenses to be activated immediately. And get me Dr. Markov. I need to understand what we're dealing with before they reach us." Dr. Kalen Markov had been one of the first to begin studying the Jedi artifacts buried deep beneath Cypher's surface. He had been fascinated by the technological mysteries they had uncovered, the machines that seemed to hum with an energy unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Markov had dedicated himself to deciphering their function, believing that the ancient power systems could be used to benefit humanity. But now, the realization hit him with full force: the Jedi's technology was not meant to be understood. It was meant to be controlled, to protect the giants from anyone who dared to approach their forgotten kingdom. Markov's eyes scanned the holographic images before him, fingers moving over the console as he traced the energy signatures emitted by the ancient Jedi war machines. They were unlike anything humanity had seen before: biomechanical beings, fused with energy cores that drew power from the planet itself. There was a hum, a pulse that resonated through the very ground, and as the Jedi grew more active, so too did the machinery that once powered their civilization. "We've awakened something," Markov muttered to himself, shaking his head as if trying to deny the implications of his findings. The fact that the Jedi's technology was tied to the very planet itself made it difficult, if not impossible, to shut down without triggering a catastrophic reaction. They had no idea what the true extent of this machine's power was. "What can we do?" Lyra's voice cut through his thoughts, sharp with determination. She had entered the room without him noticing, her gaze fixed on the holograms that flickered before them. "I don't know, Commander," Markov replied, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "But one thing's certain: they're not just machines. They're part of the planet. The Jedi were a bioorganic species that merged with their world on a level we can't comprehend. Their technology isn't separate from them. It's an extension of their biology. Can we use it?" Lyra pressed. "Can we turn it against them?" Markov hesitated. "I'm not sure, but if we can somehow tap into the planet's energy network, if we can exploit it, we might be able to fight back." "Then we fight back," Lyra said, her resolve hardening like steel. "Prepare everything we have. If they think they can just take this world back, they're in for a surprise." The days that followed were a blur of desperation and determination. As the Jedi began their advance, the human defenders mounted a desperate resistance. They had no hope of defeating the giants in direct combat. The Jedi's weapons, energy beams that could cut through steel, were far beyond anything humanity had in its arsenal. But the humans did not give in. They built makeshift defenses, fortifying the colony's perimeter with whatever they could scrounge up. They scouted the ancient ruins for any advantage they could exploit. They fought with the ingenuity and tenacity that had brought humanity to the stars in the first place. And, slowly, they began to learn. They found weak spots in the Jedi's technology, ways to disrupt their power sources, ways to force the ancient war machines to malfunction. It was a war of attrition, a battle not just of weapons but of will. As the Jedi grew more relentless, their assault more furious, Lyra found herself at the forefront of the resistance. She was no longer just the commander of a small colony, she was leading the charge against the most formidable force humanity had ever encountered. The stakes had never been higher. The fight for Pax Theta was not just a fight for survival, it was a fight for the future of humanity's place among the stars. The giants had awoken, and humanity, for all its flaws and fragility, was going to make sure they didn't take what was theirs.